London in the mid-60s was the place to be. The capital was swinging and change was in the air, but Kenneth Williams looked unlikely to play any part in it. Conservative of dress, lifestyle and habits, he seemed a figure out of step with the times. But his outer conformity hid a fascination with the new sexual freedoms of the age.
It was swinging London, and Kenneth was always incredibly immaculately dressed. He was a very smart little chap, and he had a furled umbrella, I remember, and he was on the back of my Lambretta on the pillion. He always used to sit rather straight on the pillion. And in those times you could go round Eros, and for some reason I thought, I'll go round Eros, so I felt a bit high. And Kenneth suddenly started shouting, waving this umbrella, saying, where's it all happening? Where are all these orgies? Why haven't we been asked?
Williams' wish to be part of the action was answered in 1964 when he met one of the most anarchic and flamboyant figures of the age, the playwright Joe Orton, who just caused outrage with his first West End hit, entertaining Mr. Sloane.
When I was with him in life, I found myself laughing so much of the time. He was terribly funny. I mean, often he was a very impish and outrageous kind of wit.
Like Williams, Orton was gay, working class, and a prodigious diarist. Unlike Williams, Orton revelled in his sexuality. He lived with his long-term lover, Kenneth Halliwell, and sought sexual adventure at every opportunity.
The freedom of his humor, the freedom of himself, is what so appealed to Williams, who was so unfree in himself physically and intellectually. He was bound by convention and under wraps. And even if Williams couldn't in himself be unabashed, he could be part of someone's story who was unabashed, and that was liberating.
I remember one escapade in Leicester. He revisited Leicester and said we couldn't go to my parents' house. So he took this bloke instead to the porch, which was the only part that remained of a derelict house. And he said that having sex in this porch was peculiarly difficult because the circumstances were very confined. And he said, my bum was outside most of the time and it was freezing.
But Orton wanted his friend to do more than take vicarious pleasure in his exploits. As his diary reveals, he urged Kenneth to shed his inhibitions and become more like him.
I'm basically guilty about being homosexual, you see, he said. Then you shouldn't be, I said. Get yourself fucked if you want to. Get yourself anything you like. Reject all the values of society and enjoy sex. When you're dead, you'll regret not having fun with your genital organs.
The friendship worked both ways. Orton was flattered by the attentions of a big star and loved his show business world.
The Eamon Andrews Show.
With Kenneth's encouragement, he began to make guest appearances on TV game shows and chat shows.
And tonight, Eamon's guests are Bernard Braden, Barbara Kelly, Ava Gabor, Joe Orton, The Bachelors,
Joe Orton. Welcome, Joe. Well, as I was saying, you're a very successful writer. Now, what about this business of spending 6 months in jail? It's something to do with library books, hasn't it?
Yes, I used to take lots of books out of the library, and I used to smuggle them out in a satchel. And then I used to sort of paste a picture over the picture of the author. I remember one of them was by Lady Lewisham, a book on etiquette, actually. And I painted a picture of, or pasted a picture of, a great nude woman cut from a nude book. People must have been very surprised.
At heart, Williams and Orton were cut from the same cloth.
I wasn't giving myself airs at all.
Both were highly intelligent and determined to prove themselves in the eyes of the world.
Well, I didn't do it just on one book. I did it on hundreds.
They always looked like two delinquent schoolboys to me. Both of them rejoicing in one another's schoolboy cleverness. And both needed success and didn't want unsuccess at any price.
Orton was determined his new friend would star in his latest play, Loot, and cast him as the worldly and brutal Inspector Truscott. Williams was thrilled to be back on the stage in a work by the country's hottest new writer. But their first and only collaboration ended in disaster. The play died a death during its provincial tour and never made it to the West End.
We were at Bournemouth, and one usherette was reported as saying that it was unnecessarily filthy, as if there really was a necessary amount of filth.
People were emptying the auditorium all the time, you know, with that production, because we came under the watch committee in Manchester, because we hadn't got the seal of the Lord Chamberlain, and we had policemen in the wings saying, if you say that line, the watch committee are banning that line, if you say that line, because the policemen had to say, where do you do it? Where the streets are well lit, there are no open spaces, where do you do it? 5 pregnancies in 1 week, where have you done it? And the boy had to say, on crowded dance floors during the rumba. And they said it was a definite aspersion and rudeness about the local dance halls.
The offence the play caused was not the only problem. The cast couldn't find a playing style that worked, and no one was struggling more than Kenneth Williams.
Although Kenneth was in love with the play, it seemed to me, as we proceeded with the rehearsals, that he was wrongly cast.
I saw it on its last night. I knew that it was meant to be a comedy, and it wasn't making anybody laugh. And Kenneth was, I don't know, I suppose he was just desperate. He was doing a send-up of something or other, but he was going into many different characters while he was supposedly playing this detective.
After the show, I felt so suicidally depressed, I just don't know what to do. The utter shambles of this production is totally unbelievable. The cast is demoralized and the script practically in rags, and some of it complete nonsense. I wish I'd never set foot near the rotten mess of it all.
Orton had failed to revive Williams' stage career, but he did transform his private world. In the summer of 1966, Orton and Halliwell took Williams on holiday to a place that would change his life. Tangier, in the 1960s, was a haven for gay men, drawn there by the availability of sexual partners in a society tolerant of unconventional lifestyles.
Orton took to it like Pinocchio at the fair, you know. I mean, Orton really could get into it, loved it, was sensual, was young, muscular, worked on his body.
Typically, Williams approached the Tangier experience with more restraint. Barry Wade met him on his first trip there.
We'd wear all his full clothes, suit, tie, jacket, and sit on the beach. Completely dressed. We're not going to take my clothes off in front of the sun. But we would all go swimming, and Kenneth would have a few drinks and plonk himself into a deck chair and go to sleep. Rather like that, as you can see. And he might take a jacket off if it got too hot. That's about as far as you'd get, I think. He would complain bitterly all the time and thoroughly enjoyed it.
But while the temptations Tangier offered unsettled him, Williams couldn't resist completely. In Tangier, Williams could skirt the fringes of a world that both repelled and fascinated him. It offered an escape from his unhappy life at home, and, as these previously unpublished photographs reveal, somewhere that he could relax and feel part of life.
On all the occasions, I fled to Morocco because of some inner despair. There wasn't one really successful visit in the sense of spiritual replenishment, but they all worked after a fashion because new rhythms were created and the pendulum must swing. It's when the pendulum is motionless or barely moving at all, that is the time of suicidal despair.
But the relationship that helped create these new rhythms was cut tragically short. On August the 9th, 1967, Kenneth Halliwell beat his lover Joe Orton's brains out with a hammer. He then took 22 sleeping tablets to kill himself. The loss of his friends confirmed for Williams the danger of following Orton's sexual creed.
There's no question about it. It is a homosexual entanglement that does destroy Joe. There's no question about that. I mean, Halliwell's jealousy, I mean, his letter at the end says the answer to this can be found in the diaries. And the diaries of Joe were entirely accounts of promiscuous sex.